Hi and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our community conversations of liberating women for us by us. And today we're going to talk about keeping families together and the voices of mothers who've been impacted by incarceration and state-sanctioned separations. We'll also go over the landscape of women's incarceration nationally, and also the landscape here locally in Rhode Island around women's incarceration and child welfare separations here in our state. And then we'll also have a discussion with many leaders in the state and people who've been working on this issue and who have been directly impacted, and anyone else who joins us on this meeting to join the discussion. We'll end off too with initiatives and future events and some of the things and ways to get involved in working to reduce the separation of families, particularly with the involvement with the criminal legal system, and also through child welfare. So thank you and welcome and thank you for joining us today. Just want to say hi to everyone who's here with us in the meeting. Can you go to next slide, please? And again, that's where we are. Thank you. So as we know, this has been a growing, public health crisis, the increase in women and incarceration. What's particularly to interest to us is really around also, in addition to that, is those who are mothers. And in Rhode Island, based on the most recent Rhode Island DOC data, the Rhode Island DOC data shows that 55% of women sentenced in Rhode Island are mothers. And that was the most recent, with an average of 2 children per parent. And we know that the issue is even greater when we look at nationally, where 80% of mothers, based on the Prison Policy Initiative, who are jailed are parents. That was over 2 million women who are incarcerated. 80% are mothers. So we know there's hundreds and thousands of children who are without their mothers while they're incarcerated. And one of the landscapes we want to highlight, because we're here locally in Rhode Island, is we can't talk about family separation without including the child welfare system. We know the criminal legal system has a direct impact of forced separations, but also we know the landscape of Rhode Island DCF and the separations that happened there. And as you can see, there were over 2,000 children under 21 in the care of DCF or in out-of-home placements. And what happens there is 81% were for, quote, neglect. So the most highest that go under that category are supervision reasons or children who witnessed some type of DV. So these are the reasons that separations are currently happening. And even more troubling or concern is the fact that we know disproportionately that Black non-Hispanic children are impacted the most by these separations, with Latino children in second with 22%, and then 17% of white children. So we know all children are affected, but again, the disproportionality of Black children being separated from families is the highest here in Rhode Island, and should be a great concern and public health crisis for everyone involved. I do want to go back real quick. If you could go back, Lily, really quick. I'm sorry about that, but I think it's important to highlight one more back when we talk about women in incarceration, that, based on Kids Count 2019 data, when it comes to Rhode Island, and when we incarcerate women, particularly those who are mothers, that close to 60% are for nonviolent or drug-related charges. So these separations that are happening through incarceration are for reasons that are nonviolent, are drug-related, or, are less than 6-month sentences. So it really, has you think, is, creating this separation, these traumas that mothers, children, parents, and families that they have to face. We really have to, think about, is this something that's worth, separating families for nonviolent, drug-related, less than 6-month sentences that these things are happening, and really consider the costs to the state, to public health, to the public health of our state as a whole, to the health of our families. And we really need to start thinking about what's an alternative when it comes to incarcerating parents and primary caregivers. So thank you, Lily, for going back for me. And I just want to encourage as we go in, like anyone who's on here to jump in, add something, who's joining us around anything that I just spoke to. If something speaks to you, please jump in, because this is meant to be an open discussion. Again, just giving a quick landscape of some of the data and some of the reasons around separation here in Rhode Island, when it includes the incarceration and or child welfare. So can we go to yeah, there you go. Here's just a few of the names joining us today as our discussion leaders, and also Breyanna and Bailey, thank you for being here. Lily and Alice, all who've, Jasmine, Raquel, Benita, Bella, everyone here has really been working around this, advocating, doing some work, or been directly impacted by this issue. I know, we talk about whether it's mothers who are being incarcerated, other impacts are if you're a child of a parent who's been incarcerated. These are the past. So every perspective is welcomed, and because it affects every facet of a family's life. Whether it was, you were a child of, for myself, both my parents were incarcerated. My mother had my brother inside while incarcerated. So when you think about, what that's like to see your parent, in a cage, going through visitation, not being there during important events, even as myself as a mother seeing my own child, these are the things that really impact, and knowing that your child can be subjected to segregation, or as the child and your parent being, being subjected to all kinds of things that can happen to prison, not being able to have them there with you when it's needed. So I did want to kick it off with the question, and really just going down that road, like what were some of the impacts for anyone here who's actually, faced some of these, really unnecessary separations or removals? Like what were some of those separated from your child or parent, like due to incarceration? Like what were some of those impacts on your own family's life due to incarceration and separation?
For me, some of the ways that it has negatively really impacted me is my housing. When I was ready to get my child back from DCYF, now I'm trying to look for housing, and I have a felony on my record. And so that's where it harmed me like that. But with the separation, like I don't know, DCYF just made it more difficult to see my child. Like I had to go through extra classes, had to go through classes because of my record. I was not arrested with my child in my care. So I don't know who here was, but I know of people that has happened, and that's traumatizing, and that's what I want to fight for,
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll jump to you, Jasmine. I saw you. I was just going to add, one of the things to keep in mind too is, once you are involved with the criminal legal system and then have these collateral consequences of a felony, and you are a primary caregiver of a child, that's that added layer, right, of barriers to be able to, have your child back in your care, to care for your child, is housing. So we know that any parent who's involved with the criminal legal system, that the most important thing is access to housing and also employment. Otherwise, there's no way that they can support. So it's really important that those types of barriers. So I thank you, Raquel, for bringing that up, because that's a huge one. I know for myself, even though I was fortunate not to have to serve time, but only did my pre-bail time, that once I came out and my landlord found out, hey, you have a felony, I was evicted immediately. So now I have my kids and I have nowhere to go. So I think that's important to realize, like, your whole life is turned upside down once you become involved with the criminal legal system, that you don't need this added barrier to housing or employment or anything, to be able to be there for your own children. So thank you for that. And Jazz,
Definitely.
Go ahead, Jazz.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I can definitely share on this. I don't even know. There's like so many things that I could express with this from personal experience. So like at 18 was when I got my first charge, and I was like still a child, and I had a baby. He was a year old. He didn't witness any of what happened. But I got him back like pretty fast after like I did everything they asked me to do, and I got him back. But I served a year and a half for my first charge and got 7 years probation for my first charge as an adult, which was like,
wow, holy
insane.
shit.
Insane. And I was just like a kid, and I didn't even know any better, and I didn't expect this. And then I spent a year in isolation, like a year without getting fresh air, without seeing the sun, like from being handcuffed to use the bathroom. So it was a very traumatizing experience for me. And also for my son, of course. Like, he had to go into a foster home, and then went to his aunts for like a month. I mean, he was in a foster home for a month, and then his aunts until I got out, and then I got him. But it was like, so yeah, that's one thing. And then from that moment on, like, my goal as a child was I was going to be a nurse. I was going to join the army. Like, I had all these like huge plans. And once I got a record at 18, like that, all that was out the window. I couldn't go to school for what I wanted to do. I couldn't get I've been declined from every single Section 8 subsidized housing, everything, because of my record. And then I got another charge. Like, my probation ended. I completed everything. I was doing the right thing. I was in a toxic, unhealthy relationship. I got another charge, and I did a year, like, and got 9 years probation. Like, they just slap you with like this insane amount of time. It's like, so you can never like turn your life around. So that's like one of the hugest things. And then of course, like, my kids, they were there when it happened. So I feel like they probably did witness it. I was intoxicated, so I don't remember most of the time. And it was a huge lesson that I learned, right? From that moment on, I never used another substance again in my life. And now my kids are like, it was a fight to try to get them back. And I had while I was incarcerated, I tried to do everything I could to get them back, and nobody was helping me in there. Like, I would get my court dates after, like, I'd get in the mail that I had court after it already passed. I'm like, what the heck? And then they would tell me I need a birth certificate and I need this and I need that. And I'm like, how am I supposed to get that from behind the walls? Like, how am I supposed to get these things? So like, I was doing everything I could to turn my life around, but I had no help while I was trying to do it. And then as soon as I got out, and then it was like, as soon as I got out, I'm trying to get my kids back, and they're like, why'd you wait so long? Like, I didn't wait so long. I was trying from the moment I got arrested. Like, I was trying the whole time but there was no assistance. There was no help. I did every class that they had to offer. I did everything that I could do. Um, and then every lawyer told me that because I have a record, I'm not going to get my kids back. When I didn't do, if anybody knows me and sees my Facebook, like, my kids are my life, they're my world. I do anything for them. And like what happened with my ex-husband had nothing to do with my kids, right? My kids have never suffered. I've never like hurt them, or you know what I mean? And for them to say that like I can't be a parent because I was defending myself is insane. So just yeah. There's so many, and then my kids, yes, that for them to be ripped from their mother, you know, like from their mother to be ripped from them to be separated from each other. They each went to a different house. So that's traumatizing for them. So there's so many aspects that go by around with this whole incarceration. And then there was one other thing that I wanted to state that I feel like is important is my ex-husband was like abusive and narcissistic, right? And he called the police, so they just listened to him. But the thing is, the advocate, the domestic violence advocate, said, I know that he's the what they like quote it a certain way, like he's the offender, he's the perpetrator, whatever.
Aggressor.
Not the what?
The aggressor, right?
The aggressor. Thank you. So she knew, and she was like, but I can't say anything. Don't tell them that I said that. And I was like, this is insane. Like, this is insane that he can get away with, and he is a white male. Like, it's just, there's so many aspects of the situation that I could speak on, but I just wanted to make sure that I expressed how important like all these things are, and like the way that the system works, and how it's like it's not there to help, it's to hurt. Yep, that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Oh my goodness, Jasmine. Can I speak?
Yeah.
May I speak? Oh, Jasmine has me here with my heart and my throat and my stomach spinning like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna puke or am I gonna cry. I had she's almost telling exactly what my story is. I was in my 20s, I was pretty wild, you know what I mean? And I used to sell drugs. I pretty much just smoked a lot of weed, and I used to sell drugs with my boyfriends. Any relationship, 3 relationships that I've been in were always my boyfriends were always drug dealers. So I went to jail. I was in a pretty like dangerous kind of living, as far as being around drugs and things of that nature. But and I was very, very wild, very, very wild. And I caught a charge in my 20s. And I went to jail. Okay. Wait, first, I caught a charge for a pound of weed when I was 18 years old, and I served like 90 days and got 6 months probation, but that was still a felony. Boom. So there's my first felony at 18 years old, just like Jazz's. I had my 2 oldest children, and the time that I was in jail, they stayed with my mom and dad. So that's my first felony. Okay, I would get in trouble for like little stuff, fighting and things of that nature. Probation. If I knew then what I know now about probation, I would have never took any of it. I would have served all the little time. They want you to do 10 days in prison or a year probation. At the time, you just want to get out of jail. You don't really balance it out. It's not really like, and they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They just wait for us to it seems like they wait for a time where like we almost hang ourselves, giving us a chance to hang ourselves. That's what that probation is for me. My big charge, I had to do 7 years. Now the charge before, they let my children stay with my parents, but they were giving me DCYF was given, they say they give you a year to get your stuff together and get your children. Okay, now, how am I supposed to do that when they don't have, I got parenting classes, okay, in prison, but the things that I need to work on as far as keeping my apartment and giving clean urines on the outside, they're starting this after I do the 6 months in prison. So things take time, you know what I mean? And I struggled my ass off for that 6 months. And my parents had my children as what do you call it? When you give them custody of them.
Yeah,
Guardianship, yes, or a guardianship. I almost had to give, I almost had to let my parents adopt my children for going to jail for 6 months. I think it was a fight, but it was the 6 months that I had got prior probation for something stupid. It seems like all charges are dumb. I eventually ended up having to the same situation, having to allow my parents to adopt my children because they say that they give you a year to get yourself situated. And I was doing 7 years in prison. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking maybe you should give me a year after I get out of prison. You know what I mean? If I'm doing 7 years, I definitely can't get an apartment and do what I need to do to get my children back in a year. Like, it's just, it's terrible. I never had no issues with my children. I haven't had, like, there was no reason for, like you said, there was no domestic violence. There was no caught with drugs. There was no, as far as I can remember, it's like disorderly, of course, from being drunk outside with my friends, cookouts, hollering and screaming and shit like that. But how do you, I end up doing a robbery and had to do the 7 years, but that's when, and like Jasmine said, I thought I had an advocate, and she was telling me one thing until I was brought into court to sign adoption papers. And it's so true. Like, they don't give you a chance. You know what I mean? My children had to be, now, would they do that? I have a set of twins. I had to go to jail for, I forget, like 30 days or something like that. And there was a situation where my mom couldn't watch my children for that time. So DCYF was actually, for 30 days, we're gonna separate my twin sons. Do you know what I mean? And separate foster homes. I'm like, that doesn't make, they shouldn't even be looking for a foster home. What is that? Is it because of my past? Like, I'm going to jail for 30 days. You know what I mean? And I just, this past September, I haven't had a felony since my early 20s. And I'm 42 years old now. And I'm like, Jasmine, you can't get any freaking, you're held back. As soon as they hear you have a felony, like, I can't get a job. I can't.
You're muted, Benita.
Unmute yourself.
It's very, very hard. September, I finally got off of 15 years probation and I cried my freaking eyes out. I didn't even know I was off probation. I've been on probation all my adult life. You know what I mean? And now, from what I understand, I'm hoping I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna fight and advocate for myself because I need those things to be expunged. I understand it, you know what I mean? But that stuff is holding us back. I went to jail one time when I was pregnant with the twins, and I had to do 20 days for something. I mean, you can't even, you're very, very uncomfortable. You can't get an extra freaking snack. You can't, they don't care. You're walking up and down the stairs. The bench is fucking metal. Like, it's just, they don't treat you any different, which I understand if you can't, but there's certain things depending on how pregnant you really are. You know what I mean? Oh, you're only 2 months pregnant. You're not even showing you can get on the freaking top bunk. That's not cool. That's not cool. They've got you on the top bunk until for a week until they decide to give you, you know what I'm saying, 2 mattresses on the bottom level. And things have changed as far as the prison system goes. But it's just, it's like, what did I do? What did I do so bad that I can't parent my children? And you never heard me. I never abused them. I never had them in abusive situations. When you take my children, I went to jail most of the time for bullshit, someone else's shit. Like, I'm not no big bad freaking wolf, you know what I mean? But that probation kept me having to do some kind of time. And every time I got my kids back, something else stupid would happen. I almost felt like, I don't know. It's just that, I mean, driving without a license, I know I'm not supposed to drive without a license, but you got to do time these days for shit like that. And now there's your children again. You know what I mean? Oh, I forgot my license was suspended. There goes your children again, you know? And they'll take your children as soon as they find out that you're in jail. They don't know how long you're going to be there. They don't know, you know what I mean? They don't, it's like, wouldn't you, first thing you would do is look for family members or something. Like, it's crazy. They just, and everything, nobody answers your phone calls. You go to the counselor, nothing's important to them, it seemed like. You all these slips, they put in a request slip to see your counselor. For what? For what? For her to say, your court date is this day, and then that day comes up. I don't know how many times they cancel your court dates and you ain't even sentenced. It's just, I can go on and on about the separation and how these children, like, I had to teach my children about jail and criminals and all that because they were coming to visit me. They thought I was going to be in a black and white, you know, striped suit, and they cried because they thought that once I left my visit, I was going to be behind all these wall bars, and that it's up to us to decide whether to have our children come to visit us. But like, my children went through hell when I was in jail, and I did too. My daughters even watched me get strip searched almost. Like, they're standing right there while we got to strip search her. I come back, oh, Mommy, what does that mean they got to strip search you? Like, it was my experience and the women's facility in Rhode Island is I can go on and on about, and about police, they setting you up because they know your face, they know your name. Like, it's just, it's awful. And the DCYF should be trying to accommodate you. Do you know what I'm saying? The only thing they're trying to do is place your child somewhere, you know? And of course, if you're in prison, you're a big bad wolf and you don't need to have your child. You know what I mean? It's awful. Like Jazzmin said, she was a victim. And the way the judicial system went, she went to jail for a year. Can you imagine? After being abused, the fucking court system and DCYF abuses you again. That's gotta be a tough pill to swallow. Just keep, it's like being raped over and over again. Oh my God, thank you for letting me get that off my chest.
Thank you so much for
Right.
sharing.
Benita, you shared so much about, yeah, definitely, yeah, like Bella said, you shared so much in so many different complex areas of this, right? I mean, even when you said about the time, like for an ounce of, you know, marijuana, like they're about to legalize marijuana. So you were separated
Right.
from your children, you know, these
Right.
criminalized, and they're about to legalize, right?
You know what I mean? It's beyond me. It's beyond me.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
And you, like, you just touched on all that, like having, you know, what we need is, you know, having safe and supportive families, secure housing, able to get employment, you know.
And then when you do,
all kinds of things.
when you do finally get out of prison or whatever the case may be, where is their support where, okay, now here we are, you have a team, Benita, that's gonna help you in all areas and make sure you have housing, and you know, of course, we're gonna do urine screens and you might have to do some meetings and XYZ, but we're gonna do everything that we can to reunite you and your children. Where is that at? They just send us out into the world. It's like, okay, we're gonna need you to jump through this hoop, and then we're gonna give you your children back. Okay, look, I jumped through the hoop. Here goes, well, we're gonna need you to jump through both of these. The third damn hoop is on fire. Like, it's like, I can't, it's almost impossible without some help. I can't do it without any help. And just because we've been arrested before, we're shunned. We are shunned.
Yeah, that's.
Hey, this is Bella. Can I weigh in?
Sure.
So I'm Bella. I'm the executive director of Coyote. I'm from Florida. I've lived here about 10 years in New England, but I went to prison for 3 years before my daughter was born. The second time I went to prison, my daughter was 4. She was 9 when I came home. I went to prison for being a prostitute addicted to crack, and I wrote a couple bad checks. Nothing violent. I mean, I watch men, you can rape a child and be out of prison quicker than that, right? And I'm just like, but society, I really felt like I was taught that I deserved it because I was this bad hoe and, you know, da-da-da. I was so lucky that my parents took my daughter, so she didn't end up in state care. But I so relate to, I don't care if you get 30 days probation. Once you're sucked into that system, it's almost impossible to get totally out. And I'm gonna tell you what happened to me. So when I went to prison, my mother told the juvenile court that my daughter had nightmares when she talked to me because my mother was kind of crazy. And I actually wrote the judge and told him I felt my parental rights were being violated, that I wanted an attorney. So they had to transfer me back to my county, give me an attorney, take me to family court. And the judge says, you can have non-collect phone calls and a picture every 6 months. My daughter was 4, she couldn't write a letter. You can't call non-collect. And and my lawyer says, you can't appeal it, it's not an ongoing order. I said, you ask him every 30 days until he makes it a final order. I fought it all the way to the Supreme Court in Rhode Island and lost because the law says they have to try to reunify parents when possible, that's in the best interest of the child. And, you know, I have to say this, I was lucky, like I said, my mother brought my daughter to see me. She moved out of state. I saw my daughter 1 time in 5 years. And I was so friggin' grateful that they brought her to me that I didn't even care I had another year left to go. And I was lucky again that my family took me in, my parents were in recovery, that I had somewhere to go. So part of what Coyote does is we provide support for incarcerated sex workers, incarcerated women, all over the country, trying to, you know, if you don't have anywhere to go and you don't have a halfway house or a transitional program, we know you're going back to jail, because the way I was when I got out, things are hard. You're expected to work for minimum wage. It doesn't cover your rent. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You don't have any friggin' boots. And it was just as easy to say, screw it, and go hit the streets and go get high and go make.
Oh my God.
Right?
Oh my God.
One of the things that we want to do is, I've looked at Rhode Island. I do a lot of, like Cherie, I do a lot of mapping out. Where's this money going? What's happening? We've all seen the headlines with the kids dying in DCYF, but they've privatized foster care. And we know there's a thing called what? foster care to prison pipeline, right? And when they, I'm sure you've all heard all the stuff about trafficking. Everyone's being trafficked. Everyone's looking for children. And John Jay College did a great report. They went to 6 cities. They interviewed 1,000 kids between 13 and 24, and 97% of these kids said, we don't have pimps and market facilitators, but the state's created so many barriers we can't access shelter or other services. So when you have mandatory reporting where a social worker, a teacher, anyone the child would go to has to report them to DCYS within 24 hours, and they've already been screwed over by that system. There's something fundamentally wrong when kids rather live in the street rather than have a safe bed somewhere. So one of the things that we're trying to do in the future, and we will hope to have more of these conversations, is how do we reimagine communities? And we know not only do you need housing for your kid, you need childcare, you need mental health, you need healthcare, you need community, because being shunned by your community is why people stay in addiction. And most of these crimes are poverty crimes. We looked it up, 71% of the women incarcerated are in for friggin' misdemeanors, right? So we've got to do, but one thing that I see that connects us all, the amount of pain that it caused us from being separated from our children is the most. And I can say this, so my daughter was 9 when I got out. She was so grateful I was home. She didn't even tell me about a lot of experiences that were kind of abusive that my mother did to her, because she didn't trust that I was going to stay with her, that I wasn't going to go back to the streets. And by the time she got to be about 11 or 12, she was really angry at me, and she had a right to be angry. But I want to tell you this, my daughter's 29. She's in my bedroom doing an extreme makeover because she came to visit me for Mother's Day. She's also a 2nd-generation sex worker who didn't start sex work till she was 21. And we are closer today than ever. So I want to put that out there. While it's hard, we can repair these relationships with their child, and we want to help provide everyone with the community they need to help them strive and reform these relationships. But again, thank you all so much for sharing your stories. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bella.
That's what I wanted to share about too, about how it affected me and my relationship with my kids is after that first, so like, I spent every moment with my son, and I was, the sole provider. I was a single mom. And that first time that I was incarcerated and I fought to get my son back, he was like 4 years old when he finally, and I was pregnant with another child when I finally got him back. And so when the last incarceration happened, my youngest son, I had another baby, and he was 2 years old when I got incarcerated. This child had never been away from me. Like I had he never slept in bed for a year and a half. What's wrong, baby? Yeah. Speak of the devil.
I know, you're the kids now.
And he had never spent a moment away from me.
My leg.
Siblings.
Come down.
Joy to my ears,
I'll just
Jason.
recap. As she consoles her little one, and I've known Jasmine a long time, and she's been a leader in the community, and her kids have always been there by her side with the exception of forced separation through incarceration and DCYF involvement. So it's really hard, but I hear everyone say, and thank you so much to Bella for sharing that, because the needs, right, for supportive housing, long-term housing, like that's needs. We know families and parents with criminal records, experience significant challenges, not to put on the incarceration, where I talked about, for me, having that felony after that, and then having to find housing for my kids and employment, that would be a 20-year bid, right? Benita talked about how long ago that happened, yet still living with that, why it would take 20 years. Why does it take like Jasmine too? And let me know when you're ready to jump back in, Jazz. But how long it takes to get away from the stigma and the criminal legal system barriers, and how do we find solutions to that? And we hear a lot of the basic needs, because a criminal record, what it does is create more barriers. So I heard the frustration in some of sharing, like when Benita shared, okay, so now I come out and now you want me to do what was hard to do in the beginning. Now I'm supposed to do it with a criminal record. That's going to make it just impossible to actually do. And it's a setup. And we know that's how the system is set up, that
You know
it
what's really
becomes
crazy?
impossible.
I passed, like I said, I was in Florida and I got out of prison June of 2000, and I went and paid the AG's office $5, and they gave me a BCI printout that says I have no criminal record. So I was allowed to volunteer at Sojourner House. And I went to Sojourner House and I said, I get an old warrant that's active in Florida. And what if I was a dangerous predator from another state? Your screening said, but it's so bizarre that a lot of states are like this. They don't do the international thing, but you're still in Rhode Island and you're stuck with that record. Yeah.
Jazz, you ready to come back to?
Yeah, sorry. Speak of the devil. Yeah, so he had never spent a moment away from me, and then to be ripped from his mother. Oh, here he goes again. To be ripped from his mother like that is like, I know that is traumatizing to him, right? And then also for me, I was scared because like my bond with my oldest son, I feel like it never was the same. You know what I mean? Because I missed a year and so much time of his life. And then now with and praise God that my baby like still loves me to death. And I was like, I thought he wasn't even gonna remember me. Like I thought he wasn't even gonna know who I was. And that pain, sitting like in a prison cell and not knowing what's going on with your kid and if they're okay and who's watching them, like with my oldest son, was the worst pain I ever felt. And I didn't have my oldest son come visit me because I didn't want anybody to ever know that I was in there. Like I never wanted people to know. But this time around, I was so like scared of our bond being broken that I was like, you can come visit me. You can come visit me in here. And go ahead, go play, baby. And there was something else that you guys were talking about that I wanted to speak on. Oh, about having to do everything. Yeah, they had me doing breathalyzers in the courthouse for an hour visit. Like I'm gonna show up drunk to see my kid at a courthouse. Like that's what I'm gonna do. But yet my ex-husband, who was the aggressor and who put me like nobody could recognize me. I was unrecognizable when I showed up at the prison. People were like, what does the other guy look like? And but yet he could be smoking marijuana around and it wasn't a problem. But
I was there, Jazz, you remember?
Yeah, she was in the holding cell with me the same day. Yep.
And she's not speaking one word of a lie. She looked like she was mangled and being charged. And
then also the one other thing I wanted to say was, so I tried to expunge my record, right? I was like, I'm not gonna let this hold me back. I'm gonna like still try to be something. And like after 5 years, I went. And they were like, you owe this much money in fines. I'm like, no, I had no idea. No one ever told me I had to pay fines. I never had to go to court for that. I had no idea. And they were like, yeah, and you can't expunge your record yet. You have to wait till your 7 years probation is done. Then wait 5 more years after that, or 10, depending on if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. So
that's crazy.
It's like they literally are setting you up for failure to never ever be able to like move on with your life. But yeah, that was all I wanted to say.
No, it's that vicious cycle.
It
right?
is. It is. It's really awful. And Jazz, I didn't mean to jump in. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Jasmine touched on something about how it affects our relationships with our children. Now, I went to prison when my daughters were 7 and 8 years old. So when I got out, like they would come to me, visit me every Wednesday and every Saturday. Thank God they did Girl Scouts and all of this, but I was there for a few years. By the time I got out, my daughters were 12, 13, 14, you know what I mean? And they were teenagers. And they missed me. They welcomed me. So glad you're home, Mom. This, that, and the third. But there was always something I didn't realize until they were 17, 18, 19 years old, where they started throwing things in my face like you weren't there when I needed you. And it's a lot of, I went through a lot of guilt and shame, you know, and I mean, I'm explaining to my children, and there was just nothing I could do. I really should have never even been in jail that long. I should have snitched. I should have told, you know what I mean? But, you know, being brought up in the South Side, the hood of Rhode Island, yes, that's not, and being young and stupid, and I did a lot of crazy things. When I had my two daughters, I wasn't grown up yet, and I'm in my early 20s. But I had to deal. They're 22 and 23 now, and I bent over backwards. I went through such guilt and shame for leaving my daughters, and there was things that they could have. They could have made our visits, you know, more personable. Do you know what I mean? They would yell at you. Literally, you're getting yelled at. You can't hug your children. You can't hug your mom. Reaching over the table. What are you doing? We're freaking passing candy back and forth. You know what I mean? It's very uncomfortable for your children when they do visit to be like, oh my God, this guy's sitting here staring at us and we can't even, you know? It's been a long time. It's been over 10 years since I've been out of jail, about 10, 12 years, and I am still getting the freaking brunt of that fucking charge. I'm like, seriously, please, you don't think that I've grown up or changed just a little bit since then? Like, give me a fucking break.
Yeah,
Hey, can we give
you were a
Raquel,
kid.
Raquel has her
Raquel?
hand up.
Yep, I was going to Raquel Bell. Thank you.
Yeah. So are we just, because I'm looking at this this whatever it is. Are we just talking about the separation from jail, or are we actually talking about the separation from DCYF too?
Yeah, definitely. Any
Okay,
separation,
because
definitely, because
you know, because I wasn't really too locked up that much. But with DCYF, like I am so traumatized still. You know, I just saw my 8-year-old today, and every time, like, I love seeing him, but when I leave, I just have this guilt in my stomach all the time. I can't. Like, I have 2 babies. I have an 8-year-old Julius, and I have a 3-year-old Hercules, and I fought so hard for my son Julius. You know, for 4 years. You know, I lost him due to me telling on myself, because I never even had a positive urine with him, but me saying that I had a drug problem. He came out clean. You know, he didn't test positive when he came out. I was clean when I had birth. But they put him in DCYF because of me just saying that. So, and I was with a narcissist boyfriend for like the first year and a half of his life, and then I got involved in Project Link, probably like a year when he was about a year. I got involved in Project Link, and I remained sober, you know, and I obtained my medical marijuana license, and DCYF did not like that whatsoever. You know, well, at first they did. They really didn't mind. You know, they needed me to just get the proof, get whatever, you know, get it approved through the courts. which it's a little, it should be unnecessary, but it was easy enough to do. So I did that. And it was great. My relationship with him got so close. I was at the point where I was having unsupervised visits. I went through the Boys Town reunification program or the Boys Town visitation. And I did the supervised visits for so long. And then I had unsupervised visits for about I had 20 of them. And then I was doing unsupervised in the community. I had 3 of those. And then all of a sudden, my Providence DCYF worker got switched to Bristol because I live in Riverside. When that Bristol worker got my case, first of all, he shows up at my house at 7:30 at night to introduce himself, coming looking all intimidated right away. And I'm like, whatever. And then tells me, oh, well, I don't see anything about you completing, because I had just completed Project Link. He said, I don't see anything about completing Project Link, whatever. Well, I'm gonna need you to go into another outpatient program. No problem. All right, so I'm in Phoenix House. I'm doing Phoenix House outpatient. And he says, oh, well, no more unsupervised visits. I'm gonna need you to come to my office. We're gonna do 1 hour a week supervised visits in Bristol. Okay, so I'm supposed to get to Bristol. Okay, so no problem though. Still, there was no call, no show with my visits for 2 months, to the point where I'm calling him. I have the binders of all the calls I had, all the classes I took, everything, and I relapsed. I am sick to my stomach still. It's not and it's been 3 or 4 years now since I let my aunt adopt him. Thank God he's in a safe place. Thank God he's with my family. But it's still such a tough situation for me still, because that's my son. You know what I'm saying? That's my life. DCYF took my heart away from me. It's just wrong. It's wrong. What the separation between mothers and their children is beyond wrong. I can hear my sons cry. When I wasn't there, I can hear his cry. It's traumatic. There needs to be better solutions for mothers and for children. The separation is no good.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Raquel, because, and that's, you talked about so many things, and everyone else, Benita, Jasmine, Bella, really around, the separation impacts the attachment issues on, our kids, the mental health and, effects on, the parents' mental health, the child's mental health, even on, substance use, right? And relapse, and all these things that separation, does, these forced separations, and do they really need to happen? When I hear some of the things, I know, Raquel, I know your story. I was in the court when they said, if you still get your medical marijuana card, you're not getting your son. And so you think, and when I hear you, Benita, you're on probation and you get a driving with suspended, you're going to jail. Guess what? You're not going to see your kids, and you think about these things. And I've known Jasmine, talk about a leader in the community 12 years ago when I met her. And out there with her kids, and to think that you could go before a judge and you're a primary caregiver, and to separate, and then, you're not only, a judge is not only impacting the person standing before them when you're a primary caregiver, you're also negatively impacting the children and your family. So I think, I want to thank you all so much for sharing that, because what it's saying too is the solutions, because in sharing our stories, we're highlighting some of the needs and some of the important things that have to be done. And we had some of the things that I think, trying to move towards that way. There's so much more that can be done. I think even Bella like highlighted with the housing and the supports that Coyote does and other organizations. Like, how can we keep going? You know, a
It
couple.
has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere.
Right.
I
And
mean,
it's gonna start right here with us, and we're
I'm
gonna keep
thrilled.
it going.
I'm thrilled that this program is giving you guys are giving us women a voice. It's been always, you know, we're not, you know, once things like that happen in our lives, like we're like to the side, not important. You know, you're not important, you're shunned, you know.
Hey, listen, folks, Alice is going to drop a jot form in the chat line, and it's going to have some questions, because one of the things that we're thinking about is, would y'all like to get together once a month at a park somewhere? We're going to get people to help watch kids and just to build some community. But one thing I just started thinking about that really sucked, and I'm sure it happens in Rhode Island, when they allowed a grandma, the grandparents, to take the kid because we went to jail or substance abuse, whatever the issue was, there was a thing that said I couldn't live in my mother's household while she had it, right? That, like, you would think that they would be glad that I could live in the same household and my mother was there to supervise and support me, but they made it illegal. If I got caught living in my mother's house, they would take the child from her. So that's fucked up. But I want to, listen, if we want to go on longer, I'd love to hear from more people. I want everyone to have a chance to talk.
Right.
And I want everyone to fill out the jot form, because we want to know what we can do, what you all want, where we can go from here in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella. Yeah, so
Where is the jot form?
we're gonna get to that in the end. So next we wanted to highlight, actually that's towards the end. We'll put that in, Benita, and we'll make sure we get it to you. We were
Can
gonna,
I really quick? So this is longer than 5 to 6.
yeah, we were just gonna end off with a few minutes just to highlight. So one of the things, we have two people who had worked on, so Raquel, and there's some people on here who were part of the Keeping Families Together website and advocacy toolkit, where we had done focus groups. And I know, Raquel, you were a part of some of that. So we wanted to do a real quick 3 minutes. We wanted to really give everybody a chance to share their story.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. I don't mean to rush off. Like, I was just trying, because it's Mother's Day. I just had a lot going on.
So definitely we can.
Do you want to do my little 3-minute thing and then I'll get off?
Yeah, so we had, you know, just an update, but if we can end our recording right now and go offline, if everyone has to go, if that's what everyone wants to do, it's up to you. We did have 2 more things to highlight here. Oops, I'm losing my slide. Oh,
yeah, don't let me ruin
no,
this.
don't worry. If you have to jump off, keep jumping off. We'll go over, and I think Breyanna was going to share her screen. We were going to let Breyanna share.
All right, guys.
Go to the website.
Guys, thank you guys for being here, and I hope we can really start doing this like once a month, meeting up. I look forward to meeting you guys. God bless you guys, and happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day, guys. Bye.
So I don't know if Breyanna, you wanted to just continue with presenting that really quick, and then we'll go to Bailey and end off if everyone else can stay on.
Who is it?
Breyanna was going to share about the Keeping Families. Do you have share screen capability, Breyanna? She's just going to show you. So while Breyanna's doing that, I'll give a little overview really quickly. And we lost Raquel, so I did want to say thank you, but Raquel was actually part of some of the focus groups and others to create this advocacy toolkit. So one of the things we were thinking about hearing from stories was when parents are involved with DCUF, how to advocate for your children back. So one of the things that we started to work on, and we want to continue to work on with all of you, is adding information and ways to advocate for your child when you're involved with DCUF, from the moment that a call is made from the moment that an investigator comes out to your home through all the way through the process within the court, visitations. Benita, you talked about visitations inside and how not being a hug your children. And Raquel talked about having an hour visit, or Jasmine having this hour visit. What really needs to happen, and how often you need to see your children, or in fact, get them home even sooner, right? So some of these things we'll highlight. So I'm going to give it to Breyanna because I see her screen up.
Yeah, thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Breyanna, student, and I got to meet and work with Cherie over this past semester. So this project was really, it started last year and it was born out of conversations with focus groups of moms who have experienced this and recognized that there was a need, recognized that families who are going through the DCYF separation process really have little to no information about what it actually looks like and their legal rights, and there's a need just to have more information and access to resources, because if you don't and they don't see you like accessing certain things within a certain time period, it really like harms your chances of being able to reunite with your child. So they created a really comprehensive toolkit with information about the process and resources, and we just worked on consolidating all of that and putting it in a website. So this is just a few screenshots that I took because the website has not been published yet, but we're working on resources of health services, childcare services, legal services, support groups, and then there's a section on just kind of running through the whole process from investigation, what your rights are, and we really want to highlight important windows of times that you need to act that you might not know about. And then also just some fact sheets, PDFs on how do you request records, for example, laws in Rhode Island specifically. And then, sorry, I'm like kind of going through this fast, but, and then also just a place for feedback, because this is still a work in progress and we really want to center moms in this process because they've gone through it and they are the experts and know best like what resources are helpful, which ones aren't, just so that we can make it most relevant and impactful for them. And yeah, I'll just stop there. But we are definitely open to, we'd love to just get a bunch of feedback on it, just to help out in the best way possible. So I'll just stop sharing. But
Thank you so much, Breyanna, because I'm glad you really highlighted this is a working document. I mean, we have been working on this for a year, got so many parents' feedback who've been involved. I mean, even things like appeal, the 48-hour window, seeing your child from the time of removal, how often to get visits. These are things we're finding out, that these are the rights that are being violated day in and day out, and parents just aren't being empowered to know that what their rights are or ways to appeal. So this is going to be a tool to help support it, and we'll have people with the formerly incarcerated union volunteering. We have pro bono attorneys who are willing to step up, but to also help in the family court, because that's what happens is there's no representation. There aren't ways to fill out appeals. So you can actually fight it before the separation actually happens, or if it does, shorten the time you're away from your child and get them home quicker. So that's a huge piece, and that we want to keep doing. So with that being said, and I know we had gone over 10 minutes, I want to go to the next project that we've been working on to try to work towards keeping families together was this advocacy toolkit that we'll continue working on, along with a parent caregiver legislation. So I think many of you talked about, you know, being incarcerated and your rights taken away just because you were incarcerated. So this works to actually, if you're being faced with, you know, in front of a judge or some kind of criminal matter, and you're the primary caregiver, that the judge has to take that into consideration before any time away from your children. So I'm going to hand it over to Bailey really quick, who's been doing some work on that with the teams with the formerly incarcerated union, and then also with the National Council for Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. Take it, Bailey.
Yeah, Jasmine, I see you have your hand up, so I don't want to speak before you.
Oh, okay. It sounds like amazing stuff that you're about to speak on, and I can't wait to hear it. I was just saying, I was agreeing with what Cherie was saying about how important it is to have that advocacy and that help, because when I was going through the process, like, it was like the lawyers weren't sticking up for me, you know, advocating.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jasmine, because
What I could do and what I couldn't do and why I wasn't getting.
I know you're cutting out a little bit, Jasmine, but I hear you. And I remember meeting with you and having those difficulties where you're given an attorney, but they're really not there representing you, you know, and you're kind of at the whim of DCYF and the judge without really anybody advocating for you. So this is really one of those things. Jazz, if you get back in, jump in, because you're on mute right now. Okay, go for it, Bailey. And if she comes back in, we'll come back.
Sure. Yeah, so like Cherie said, the team that I'm working on is really focused on the legislative efforts. So we spent most of our semester just researching other legislation in the country that's been successful. So this parent caregiver legislation has been successful in Tennessee, which is pretty surprising considering it's a more conservative state. But our team spent most of the semester interviewing key stakeholders, hearing from community members and impacted individuals, just so that we can really push this legislative effort forward. So in doing that, we learned a few things that are gonna, you know, hopefully allow us to introduce and pass this. And briefly, I'll kind of just go through just a bulleted list of what we learned, but this legislation definitely has got to be, you know, family and child centric. It's really important to us to include impact statements from people like yourselves. And it's really important to focus on keeping families together and really pushing that narrative, especially because there are some more conservative policymakers and legislators in our state. We also know that we really have to rely on the nonprofit landscape in Rhode Island. So our next steps are just mobilizing these community-based alternatives to incarceration and influential stakeholders that can advocate for this, because it's all about increasing the visibility for this and involving a lot of moving parts in the community so that we can really push for this advocacy. Sorry, that's my dog. But so kind of our next steps really involve mobilizing community members. So that's why I'm super excited to be here with all of you today, because we really want to include your narratives and your perspectives as we move forward. And they're just, I would say, even more important than the involving like the legislators and the policymakers. We really want to hear from you, and it's really important to us because we want this passed and we want to keep families together. We want judges to consider community-based alternatives to incarceration, and that's the goal here. So right now we're kind of in the point where we need to start mobilizing and networking. So this has just been great to be a part of, and that's kind of where we're at now. We did a lot of research on data, but that's you know, what's more important to us is these connections and moving forward and mobilizing everybody. So thank you for everyone who shared today. It was really compelling to hear, and I hope I stay in touch with all of
Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey.
Yeah, I want to thank Bailey and Breyanna, who will continue to be working on that advocacy toolkit that, you know, all, you know, parents and, you know, particularly mothers who've been directly impacted have, you know, is saying how that's built, what it looks like, the information that's needed. And as Bailey had said, you know, hearing from in that piece of legislation, and we already have some legislators who are willing to sponsor, who want to be a part of this, who actually been a part of this, to continue with passing legislation here in Rhode Island, where we end these forced separations when someone's faced the criminal legal system. And it's a national effort, like Bailey said, other states have passed it. So we're trying to do it here in Rhode Island, and we're gonna all do it together. That's how we're gonna do it as a team, and to make sure it happens. So, I mean, all the leaders here today, that's what's gonna happen. So I guess with that said, I don't know, Bella, we also have another event. As far as what's coming in July for the week of July 5th to 11th. So I didn't know if Bella, you wanted to jump in on the clemency tour, but we're getting ready for the clemency tour. I can keep talking about it, Bella, or you can jump in.
I'll jump in. So basically, Cherie has actually kind of hooked me up with the National Council for Incarcerated and Previously Incarcerated Women, and they started this campaign to ask Biden to provide clemency to 100 women within his first 100 days. And he didn't do it, but a week ago, he called them and said, the White House wants to talk to you. So they're starting in New England because we have the lowest number of incarcerated women, and they will be in Rhode Island July 8th, 9th, and 10th. We'll be hosting events at the State House. There'll be a family day, there'll be a rally. We're still putting it together, but more importantly, we want you to fill out this jot form that Alice made. And we want you to, I put my email address and phone number. We want you to call us if you need support, if you just need to talk, if you want to rant. It'd be great if we can all start together to get together at a park once a month. We want to be here to build the network, to find out what we need to support you. What did I forget, Cherie?
No, and just everyone here is involved with that. So I know Jasmine, Benita, Raquel, Breyanna, Bailey, all part of this clemency tour. As we're building it, we're going to make a quilt with the little squares. If you've got someone you know inside that you want to like advocate to get them out, we want to get our women out. We know they've got children waiting at home for them. We want our mothers, sisters, grandmothers, aunts, daughters out of the prison. And like Bella said, we have some of the lowest numbers, you know, really definitely along the New England states. I mean, we hovered about 7.
So personally, I'm wondering, like most of the women that, not to cut you off, but most of the women that are incarcerated right now are due to active addiction. Like they're not really real. If you looked at if you went into prison right now and you pulled out all the real criminals, you would probably have 5. Why not turn the space of the women's prison, turn it into a freaking rehabilitation center, turn it into some kind of treatment, turn it into somewhere where mothers, something like Starbirth, can live with their children and get help at the same time. If they need to, if those 5 real criminals need to be in jail, ship them to a different state, Connecticut, somewhere that's bigger than us. There's 90% of the people in women's prison right now don't belong there. They can't get the help they need there, and it'll be recidivism back and forth, in and out, in and out, and in and out, if they don't get the help that they need. And prison, I will tell you, from being there for 7 years and doing a couple of different stints, they don't do anything to help us women in prison. They don't do anything to help us.
Right.
We agree, and that's why we're trying to reformat. Like, first of all, we want to stop women and girls from going to jail, period. Stop arresting people for petty ass shit. Let's invest in rehab, social services, housing, job training, things that support people. And that's what we're starting to call reimagining communities. And we need all of you to be a part of this as we move forward and come to our legislatures with the solution.
Benita's already down.
How about, right. How about arresting these asshole, dirty motherfuckers that are picking up the prostitutes instead of picking up the prostitutes? Let's see how many people that prostitution might stop if they can get arrested for what they're doing. The women get arrested all the time for this shit. What part do they play in it?
And the goal is that we know incarceration event, it doesn't help anything, right? We know it's not doing anything. And we know the women's prison right now, it's $17 million a year to keep it going. And you talked about, Benita, there's places like, you know, at Butler where they have you can go in to, you know, the CSU unit, you get all this great treatment, you know, but then insurance only pays for 2 weeks. But we'll pay $17 million to put them in a cage and get nothing. So it's like,
Give us that. We need that 17 million. We need that money.
Right. And that's the goal, is how can we get to a place where that money is taken out of putting people in cages and expanding on things like you talked about with substance use, that people want to get treatment, harm reduction. What does that look like? Housing,
For daycare,
supportive facilities, right? Daycare, Bella, right? So it's like all these things that we know primary carers, particularly mothers, need to, you know, again, around those poverty related issues that we know incarceration isn't solving, but actually making worse and actually costing us more money in the state because we're paying for these things. So we could pay a fraction of that to actually make healthier communities, healthier families, and healthier people. And you know what? You'd see crime go down. So even those 5 people there, what got them there? What didn't they have in their lives? And that's the thing. So it's like, how can we start to address that? Like Bella said, stop that. So that's some of the work we'll be working on all summer. We meet every second Sunday of the month, 5 to 6. Sometimes we go a little over because, you know, there's so much to talk about. So we'll be here again.
First conversation. We're just starting now. So, you know, we're going to build up, we're going to take everyone's impact, and we're going to change it. We're not.
I'm on board.
Oh yeah,
I am
Benita,
on
we know
board.
you down.
I know you are, girl. I love your energy.
Well, we want to thank you all again. I think Bella put the job form. And then anyone who's on, I know I have your individual emails and things, so I can send it to you too, just to fill it out. Just like feedback, like what do we talk about?